Alright, everybody. Today is the day where I get to make a video that's going to upset a lot of people in my audience. Because a lot of people in my audience who are totally wrong, might I add. And I have a full story here to back up my claim. Because I've made this claim for a long time, and never have I felt more vindicated. Because no one can defend this shit. Nintendo patent lawsuit shows that it's given up, making the case that Palworld's characters are similar to Pokemon's. Analyst says. This story goes pretty deep, but I want to start by giving you guys a little bit of backstory. For those of you guys that don't know, Palworld is a very popular game that came out earlier this year, centered around the idea of modernizing and iterating on the formula that Pokemon popularized and didn't necessarily start, but popularized. The idea of fancy, cool-looking creatures that you can go out into the world and battle, and then weaken, capture, and then make fight other creatures to capture and all that. And you build your, like, sort of team of creatures that fight for you, right? You know, just monster collector type games, right? Now, this game, let's be fair, definitely had a lot of similarities to Pokemon. Down to the character designs looked pretty similar to Pokemon. And when the game came out, there were a lot of allegations, considering its enormous size, that the models were ripped from Pokemon. Now, some people were simply claiming the designs were super similar. Others were outright claiming that the designs and models were stolen, that, like, assets had been flipped from Pokemon games into Palworld. This is proven time and time again, even after a year nearly of the game being out, to be completely untrue. I have never played Palworld. I'm not like a Palworld lover. So I have really no dog in this race in terms of a personal bias in favor of Palworld. But what I'll tell you is that my knowledge of Nintendo, ever since I, became knowledgeable of the gaming industry, has continuously led me to hate Nintendo more and more and more, which is why it doesn't surprise me in the slightest that Nintendo is suing the company behind Palworld. Not because it's aesthetically similar to Pokemon or they have any grounds to argue that anything was stolen from them, but because Pokemon, or I should say Nintendo, has copyrighted and patented gameplay mechanics that it considers to have been stolen by Palworld. Now, on the surface, you might hear the idea of patented gameplay mechanics and think, what's wrong with that? Like, if you invented a new mechanic for a game, then it might be reasonable to copyright that, right? The fact is, no. No, in no universe should any developer be allowed to copyright a mechanic. But that is what the Pokemon Company has done. If you want a good example of a company copywriting a game mechanic, look at Warner Brothers and how they patented the Nemesis mechanic, the Nemesis system. How when you would play those games, if you ran into an orc and you, like, killed them, they might survive, but with a scar and remember what you did to them and hate you now. They might kill you and advance in the ranks and get a promotion and thus become stronger, and thus you might end up having a true nemesis who grows to adapt to all of your fighting styles, keeps coming back after you kill them, or they just keep killing you, and you eventually just have an unstoppable orc war chief who's killed you 15 times and just won't fucking die because he's become so adapted, like a bacteria or a virus, to your fighting style. That's so fucking cool. It was so insanely fucking cool. As a matter of fact, if you want to see an example of what it was like, I'll show you, because there was a time where there was this promise that the future of open world gaming was this. The Nemesis System Showcase. I wonder if there's, like, any area in which they've showcased the Nemesis system. Here's, like, a Gaming Bolt video about it from 3 years ago. This entire idea of characters in an open world remembering their interactions with you has been patented by Warner Brothers. Until the year 2035, unless Warner Brothers manages to prolong the patent, they own that. The idea of an actual living, breathing open world where characters in it remember you and organic stories can come from that, no other game series gets to have that, or any game company besides Warner Brothers Games gets to own that or use that without paying royalties or getting sued. And here's what that mechanic was like, for an idea of like what I'm talking about here.
If not for the Nemesis system, Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor would have been a decent but ultimately unremarkable game. An open-world action title with combat similar to the Arkham series and parkour similar to Assassin's Creed games wouldn't have grabbed an awful lot of headlines, even if it did carry the Lord of the Rings license. In 2014, though, for a good few months after it came out, Shadow of Mordor was on everybody's lips and minds, and it was almost entirely thanks to the revolutionary Nemesis system that the game was lifted up from being solid but unremarkable to being the next big thing. Before we begin, please consider subscribing and enable all best new gameplay systems introduced in the 8th console generation, but what exactly made it work so well? Like any other excellent mechanic that manages to stand out, it managed to strike the perfect balance between simplicity and complexity. Behind the scenes, the Nemesis system was built on 2 or 3 systems at most, but they constantly interacted with each other in ways that yielded dynamic, unpredictable results that added unbelievable complexity to the entire experience. If you want to be really reductive about it, the Nemesis system is all about emergent storytelling. Your actions as Talion in the game's world have a direct impact on enemy NPCs, whether they live or die, whether they prosper or flounder, and that in turn affects you. Kill an enemy, however, and they make room for a newcomer to begin their descent at the bottom of Mordor's military ladder, and on and on and on the cycle goes. And that's exactly why that feels like such a reductive description. Because that loop repeats unto itself again and again, constantly growing and expanding rapidly, and that escalation that is inherent to the concept ensures that in spite of that repetition, it never gets stale. Things start out simple. You get killed by an orc, and that orc gets promoted within Sauron's army. But once you kick things into motion, the Nemesis system takes control. A promoted orc is given his own name, voice, look, and personality. If you see them again, they will taunt you about how they bested you the last time you met. If you lose to them again, they will become cockier and more confident in their abilities. Grunts become captains, captains become war chiefs, and in Shadow of War, war chiefs become overlords, and as they are promoted with each promotion, they become legitimately stronger. Their traits change, their strengths increase, and their weaknesses fade away. They even start wearing better armor, head into battles with better weapons, and look progressively more fearsome.
I know this is a really long bit that I just played to explain a mechanic in a 10-year-old game, but the reason why I brought this up is it's an example of patenting gameplay mechanics, making it such that your revolutionary gameplay mechanic that could potentially start a whole new era of gaming. Like, this could have changed open world gaming. It was supposed to change open world gaming. The idea that we now knew how to pull off living, breathing, emergent, randomly generated, basically, characters with personalities sculpted by the player's decisions and behavior. Very unique. Now, no other game gets to do this until like 2035, assuming Warner Bros. Does not extend the patent past that date, which they very well may. They very well may. So, when I talk about patenting gameplay mechanics, we're talking about a truly despicable, shitty, fucked practice without a single bit of defense that can be made for it. Now, let me give another example of Nintendo patenting a gameplay mechanic. Do you want to know something that Nintendo patented? Game mechanics that, and I quote, encourage healthy sleeping patterns. That's right. If you go down the list of Nintendo patents, a surprising amount of gameplay patents are on things that encourage healthy lifestyle choices while playing the game. Now, when you think about this for long enough, you might be able to realize why Nintendo does this. Nintendo, among many other things, one of the things that helps make Nintendo's image what people think of it as is its coziness. People think of Nintendo as a very kid-friendly, cozy, ooh-woo, soft boy company. They tend to ignore all of the horrible business practices, such as overcharging for dog shit hardware. They tend to ignore the fact that the only thing keeping Nintendo afloat at this point is the fact that they lock off all of their exclusive games to their consoles. And like go after anyone who tries to host like emulators and stuff online with the full force of the law. It's not just that. It's also the fact that Nintendo wants to maintain the perception that they are the only company that cares about their players. Patent things such as encouraging healthy sleeping patterns. Now other companies can't like tell their fan base like in a loading screen, hey, make sure you get enough sleep. It makes it look like Nintendo is the only one that cares about their players to that level, when in reality they're the only ones who are legally allowed to pretend to care that much. And there are countless other examples similar to this, where Nintendo has literally, like the Walt Disney of the gaming world, has patented things that make people fooled into thinking they're a decent company with decent morals or decent people behind them. When in reality, they're actually the Mr. Beast of gaming, where they have a perception of being angelic, can do no wrong, everyone loves them, when in reality, all of it is just a cover for an insanely scummy and awful company's behavior. And in this case, they aren't suing Palworld for anything other than the fact that they claim Palworld iterated on their gameplay features and their gameplay mechanics, and they feel that their patent of the idea of monster capture and fighting has been broken. They claim they own the concept of weakening monsters, capturing them, and then making them fight other monsters. That idea of gameplay, no matter how you change it, they own that and will sue you if you try to make, especially as an indie developer, will sue you if you try to make a game like that. So, let's get into the article. Nintendo and the Pokemon Company's lawsuit against fellow creature collectathon Palworld is for patent infringement, rather than copyright infringement, and one analyst reckons that means Nintendo has given up on trying to argue that PALs look too similar to Mons. Nintendo announced that it was filing a lawsuit against developer Pocket Pair earlier this week for infringing multiple patent rights in order to protect the valuable intellectual property that we have built up through many years of hard work. Nintendo had previously said it was looking into potential cases of copyright infringement right around the time when Palworld became a booming success, so most people speculated that if legal battle between the two monster tamers was to start, it would be centered around the creature design's visual similarities, but it seems Nintendo must have come up empty-handed in that regard. Speaking to Bloomberg, Toyo Securities analyst Hideki Yasuda explains that since the lawsuit is purely to do with patent rights, the Big N isn't going to bother arguing that Anubis looks too much like Lucario, for example. I think the Big N might mean Niantic, the company that I know is at least behind the production of Pokemon Go. I'm not a big Pokemon guy, by the way, as well, if you can't tell. So, like, the most I know about Pokemon is, Nintendo. I was thinking Niantic because they made the one Pokemon game I do have experience with, which is the Pokemon Go game, if I recall correctly. That's a game, that's a company called, like, Niantic. So that's what I thought. Nintendo. Makes sense. My bad. Listen, okay. Listen, all right? I don't know a lot about this realm of gaming, because ever since I got into games, I knew that Nintendo was a shitty company. I had no interest in buying one of their consoles. And if you can't own a Nintendo console, you can't really play Nintendo games, so you don't get brainwashed into liking the company at a young age and looking past all the evil shit they do. Nintendo filing this lawsuit for patent infringement, not copyright infringement, means that it has given up making the case that Palworld's characters are similar to Pokemon's, Yasuda says. But it shows Nintendo has more ways to stop games it doesn't like. The company owns a lot of patents related to basic game mechanics that are used in many titles today. I won't pretend to be a legal expert. From what I understand, patents normally protect someone's inventions, like software or machinery, while copyrights usually protect someone's work, like books, music, and art. Details about the case are still under wraps, so no one really knows what Nintendo will argue. Maybe they'll say the PAL catching balls are too alike to Pokeballs, or maybe they have beef with something as simple as UI prompts. It could be anything, but we won't find out for a while. You know another thing? That's the end of the article, but you know another thing that a game company a long time ago patented as a gaming mechanic? that other games couldn't do. Mini games and loading screens. For a while, it was actually the norm for games to have little mini games that you could play while games loaded, because loading screens were so long back then. And for decades, one single company copped and then held the patent on loading screen mini games, so that just stopped being a thing. And by the time the patent died, nowadays loading screens are like 5 seconds, so why would you have a mini game there? But yeah, that was decades ago patented, and before that was a pretty standard thing, was that you would have little mini games to do while you're waiting for the main game to load. And no one else got to have that because it got patented. Think of how many neat game mechanics that you saw in one game ever and it never got iterated on. There might be a reason for that. The publisher might have patented that game mechanic, and no one else, without paying royalties of some kind, are allowed to iterate on or use it. My game still takes 10 minutes to load? That sucks. Waypoint arrows are patented by Sega. Oh, another good example is the company that makes Mass Effect patented the dialogue wheel. You know how, like, Telltale games and other, like, choose-your-own-story games never use a simple wheel of dialogue options? Like Fallout, everything. Nothing can use a dialogue wheel besides, not even Bethesda, nothing but the company that makes Mass Effect can use dialogue wheels, because they have BioWare has literally patented the concept of a wheel that displays dialogue options you can select. So you can still have dialogue options in your game, but you can't have that clean, nice wheel design. Instead, you have to have like a scroll through sentences, or like different boxes to choose, or some other way of presenting it, because they have literally patented and will sue you or make you pay royalties if you simply make a circle with your options. Fallout 4 does not use a wheel either. Nope. Let me show you what they patented. Mass Effect dialogue wheel patent. Believe it or not, the dialogue wheel used in the Mass Effect and Dragon Age video games is patented. So yeah, this is the exact image of how this is the patent. Like, this is from the patent documents, like showing what, like, you are not allowed to make a wheel where you have different options and possibilities. Like, this is literally the image that comes from the legal paperwork for the patent of this game mechanic. Yeah. Oh, it gets worse. The patents were filed this year after Palworld came out. Really? That can't be true. Wyvern over in YouTube chat is claiming that the patents that Nintendo is suing on were made after Palworld came out. That seems too overwhelmingly evil even for Nintendo. That sounds too evil even for Nintendo. Listen, I know I'm going to get hate for this because, God, Nintendo fanboys, dude, they will not let you say a thing about Nintendo. They get so fucking defensive because they make Pikmin and Zelda and Mario and all these games that people like. The fact is, I hate Nintendo because Nintendo locks a shitload of gamers out from playing those great games. One thing Nintendo does that I cannot deny is they make some good fucking games. They make some good games. They do. I'm not like a big fan of a lot of their games, but Breath of the Wild was pretty fucking good. I played a bit of Breath of the Wild, and that was a good game. That iterated on the concept of open world very uniquely for the time, and that was a big deal. So don't get me wrong, Nintendo's games are great. In fact, they have to be great for anyone to put up with the company. But do not let the quality of their games and how culturally impactful they are and how much money Nintendo invests in making you think they're an uwu softboy company compared to others. I saw people in chat earlier saying Nintendo is far from being even the top 100 worst game companies. I'm not joking. I saw people in YouTube chat, which, to be fair, that is, you know, the low IQ chat. I saw people there arguing that Nintendo wouldn't even make the top 100 worst game companies. Because people are so bought into the propaganda of Nintendo, down to growing up with the games giving you health advice in the loading screens that Nintendo patented so other companies can't do that and gain the perception that they care about their players in the same way Nintendo does. They have spent So much money. They have legal teams and resources centered around keeping their company. Hell, they will strike you off YouTube if you make Nintendo-related content that's too raunchy because they don't want swearing and inappropriate content associated with their brand. Back in the day, if you were a YouTuber and you so much as whispered the name Mario, you would get your whole channel taken down. I'm not joking. If you go back to old YouTube and look at what the jokes were, like, no one would even dare to say Nintendo because there was such a high chance that your channel would get nuked off the platform because Nintendo was so prone to copyright abuse. It was the one company in all of the gaming industry where you couldn't upload Let's Plays or videos or anything related to Nintendo games because they'd fucking get your ass. For years, that was the standard. That only changed in like 2014 or something, I'm pretty sure. Remember when they wanted to charge a fee to upload anything related to Nintendo games? Yeah, literally one of the worst companies to ever exist in this platform. They are megalomaniacal, literally the Mr. Beast of gaming. There's no better comparison to make. Everyone thinks they're literally saintly, when in reality, they are as bad as it gets. So, yeah, that's really all I have to say about this whole situation. I don't give a fuck about Palworld, to be honest with you guys. I don't care about this game, but I am fully against Nintendo in this lawsuit because they have failed to prove that Palworld stole anything from them. So now they're opting to say, oh, well, we patented gameplay mechanics, which the concept of, I might just title this video, "This is Killing Gaming." Or like, "This is killing gaming fast." Like, I don't know what I'm going to title this video, but something that will very clearly showcase the fact that this is evil. Zan, this is a pretty good little video about tech patents. Apple has over 100,000 patents in 35,000 patent categories. Thank you. I actually appreciate that recommendation. I consider Nintendo and Apple...
like Apple's Tim Cook...
I consider Nintendo and Apple on par with each other. Like, Apple has much the same vibe as Nintendo. They're very similar companies in that they skate by a lot on brand recognizability and on like investing heavily in pro-corp propaganda of their company. So here's an example of how Apple does the same shit.
Know that patents are critical.
For us, our intellectual property is so important to our company.
This is clearly the case because Apple has nearly 100,000 patents globally that belong to close to 35,000 unique patent families, which roughly equates to around 35,000 unique inventions they have covered. But why are patents actually so important to tech companies like Apple, and what role do patents actually serve? Surprisingly, it's not some sort of evil, nefarious business purpose like you might think.
Patents as a concept are good, but when it comes to like patenting an idea that and like it's like in art, that's really the biggest problem. The idea of patenting an idea in art is crazy to me. Imagine if a movie producer decided to patent the idea of the best friend betraying the main character in the movie. Like that's basically the equivalent, is if a movie director decided, you know what? My movie had this storyline where the main character's best friend betrays him. Anyone else who ever does that with their story, no matter what context or anything, is impeding on my patent on that type of story, on that type of arc in a story. That is equal to what is happening here. The idea that once someone has done a thing in a piece of art, they own that idea, and it cannot be iterated on, changed, added to, or evolved because the base level of that idea is already owned, and you better pay royalties if you want to do anything with that.
The reason patents exist in the first place and why they're actually written directly into the Constitution is to promote research and development efforts by inventors.
It's like how some artists used to think they could own poses. That's a really good example. It's like an oil painting artist thinking that they own a pose for their subject to do because they were the first person to ever paint someone in that pose. Now anyone else who paints someone in that pose must be infringing on their patent.
Inventors, and making it so they don't spend years of their lives and large sums of money developing important technology, only for them to bring it to market and let others easily copy it without having to put in any time or money. Instead, a patent gives a limited monopoly on invention so that companies have a chance to recoup their R&D costs before the invention goes off patent and is freely available for everybody to use. Tim Cook.
The problem is tons of companies can extend patents and copyright. Notably, like it's happened a lot of times. I know that the trademark for like Mickey Mouse, Steamboat Willie, kept getting extended for like decades and decades and decades and decades past when it was supposed to expire. Obviously, that's not a patent; that's a trademark. But still, these things can, with good enough lawyers and enough money, can be made damn near indefinite.
Sums it up well when he says,
From our point of view, it's important that Apple not be the developer for the world. We can't take all of our energy and all of our care and finish the painting and have someone else put their name on it. We can't have that.
I'll be the first to admit that the patent system is not perfect, but on balance, it promotes the development of important technology that would otherwise not be created. In fact, the idea that patents help promote innovation is so universal that all
in the world of tech, this is far more understandable because there is legit R&D time going into making like emergent tech. That's a pretty big deal. But in the realm of art, like video games and stuff, the only way you can argue a defense for this is if you primarily view video games as a industry and not an art form. And at that point, you'd be hard pressed to call yourself a gamer. You'd be hard pressed to say that like you defend this because these companies need to protect their their development of this technology. You consider it tech development, not art. And the idea of patenting practices in art is not the same as the idea of patenting a practice or a tech development in the world of business. So if you consider gaming a business, first and foremost, then sure, you might have no problem with this whole situation. You might think it's all good, right? But when it comes to art, as a gamer myself, I want more games to iterate on these mechanics. I don't think any company should be allowed to own a game mechanic, and now you never get to experience that mechanic again in another game unless it's from that company. I think that's fucking bullshit. I do. And I would invite anyone to try to argue otherwise with me because I genuinely don't know how you can. You don't have to care about or like Palworld to like see this as a problem. I don't particularly like Palworld. I do think it's a bit of a shameless, like, cash grab type thing, but it was clearly made with some level of love. You know, it's a bit shameless, it's a bit cringe, it's a little tongue in cheek, but like at the same time, it's an indie developer who made a real game from scratch, and this massive corporation wants to shut them down because they couldn't find anything real to go after them for. Nintendo made a game for a patent, essentially. The game flopped and the studio who made it is dead. Really? They made the game so that they could patent the mechanic and go after this? That's wild to me. I mean, to be clear, Nintendo cannot allow a competitor to Pokemon. Like, the thing about Nintendo is they cannot allow there to be anything other than a monopoly they hold on anything. So this is never going to end. Nintendo will continue showing their ass and trying to monopolize the monster capture and fighting genre for as long as they possibly can, just like they tried to have a steel grip on any content about their games being uploaded online and would copyright strike you if you uploaded gameplay of their games. Nintendo is a truly shitty company that would toss you in a dumpster without a second thought if it meant they made an extra penny that year on their bottom line. And it's so sad to see, like, even people on the left defend it because they love the Mario, they love the Pikmin, they love the Zelda, oh my god. Anyway. Oh my god, Animal Crossing. Oh my god. Anyway, if you guys like this video, if you enjoyed my breakdown of this whole situation and how this practice of patenting game mechanics is bullshit that's killing the gaming industry, then consider dropping a like. It really does help the channel a lot no matter when, where, or what you're watching from me, and I really do appreciate it. You can also comment down below for a boost to that effect, and subscribe and ring the bell icon to turn on all notifications so that YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload a new video, because believe me, if you don't do that, they won't tell you. You can also follow my social medias linked down below in the description, including joining my fan Discord to be a part of the main hub of my community. It's totally free to join. And don't forget, I host game events, call-in streams, and watch parties in my Discord server, and announce all my new uploads and streams. So if YouTube doesn't tell you, then at least my Discord will. Make sure you're in there. Make sure you got notifs on. And finally, if you want to support me directly, financially, help to keep a roof above my head and electricity running through the wires in my house, then consider donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or supporting me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, StreamElements, Patreon, or buying merch to the Streamlabs link down below. But regardless of how you support me, even if you're just silently lurking and watching without saying anything, I really do appreciate it. And as always, have a good one.